Welcome to Superchargers. I'm Daniel Thomas. Let's go. G'day, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in. My guest on this episode is Krish Ramineni. Krish is the co-founder and CEO of Fireflies.ai, a leading generative AI startup which helps people and teams search, summarize, transcribe, and analyze meetings and voice conversations. Krish and I had an awesome chat, and he shared many insights from his journey into the startup world. Enjoy this one, guys. Let's do it. I'd normally perhaps ask, did you always have an entrepreneurial spirit? But listening to one of your other interviews, I found it pretty cool that you mentioned this video game Age of Empires, because I think video games, perhaps with kids and stuff, can get a bit of a bad rap. Like it's just screen time. But the way you frame that in terms of it was a game that was actually training you to like build an empire and find resources. I thought that was a pretty cool way to frame that in terms of sort of where this entrepreneurial journey was born for you. Is that a fair assessment?
Yeah, that's a really good analogy into how I went into the world of business to begin with. So I was in eighth grade, went to India for vacation, and my cousin had this game installed on his laptop that I would play every day in the evening because I was bored and I didn't have much to do. And before that, I wanted to be a doctor. I had no idea about business, didn't think anything about entrepreneurship. I come from a family where my great-grandfather, my grandfather, they were all in business. My father decided not to go down the family business route and do something different. But I would hear stories growing up about how they would build these businesses up and how they set up some really incredible, long-lasting things that lasted over 50 years back in our hometown in India. So that was just always fascinating to me hearing those stories. How this ties all to Age of Empires was it was the same thing, right? You have to take a long-term bet when you play that game. Again, a game is on average like 40 minutes to an hour and a half, and you're starting with nothing. And you're building brick by brick, layer by layer. And I realized over the last couple of years, starting a business was very similar to playing a real-time strategy game like that. So I can see a lot of parallels now going back. You have to multitask, you have to optimize, you have to figure out what the bottlenecks are, you have to make split-second decisions. There aren't things that are going to be the right answer. You have to live with the outcomes of those decisions. So I always say that game was my MBA. It taught me a lot about business when I was a little kid, and I continue to play it whenever I get it sometime these days. But it really is a way to also socialize, because that game, you have to work with other people in order to succeed. And you have to communicate and you have to coordinate just like how you would on a real business with partners, vendors, employees, coworkers, etc.
It sounds like it gave you a real appreciation for the long game, that growing something takes time, like you say, with your family, this long-term sustainable business. It sounds like it gave you an appreciation for the long game, that it takes time and that there's a lot of patience needed.
Yeah, there's an important concept in this game where you have resources and you have to spend those resources on hiring more people, right? Essentially creating more villagers that do work and build the different buildings and build the barracks for the military and so forth. So in the early game, you might have this mindset of, oh, I need to stop producing more villagers, or in the context of a company, I need to like stop growing the team, or I need to stop investing back into the company, into the resources of the machine. So it was very interesting that every little bit of resource that I would gather, I would put it back into investing in creating that empire in that game. And it's the same thing. You get compounding returns over time in business, the more you invest. So the first couple years are going to be difficult. The first 20 minutes of the game are going to be difficult. but you're setting up a strong foundation for the later game, where now that you have all of these resources and buildings, it starts to compound and accrue over time. And people say that interest is like the eighth wonder of the world. It's the same concept in business where the early investment pays dividends in the long run.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. The compound interest, like it snowballs, you're feeding back in, it grows. But yeah, to experience that young, it was almost like a kind of mini masterclass for you in a different way. That's what's cool about it. Um, so then moving forward from there, did you have what sort of things did you confront personally when you were moving towards, really sort of going out on your own and going all in on a business venture? Did you have to overcome self-doubt? Was there fear? How did you address some of those things?
My first year of undergrad, I decided after my first semester, I did not want to be a doctor anymore, and I needed to figure out what I wanted to do with my life. So I went up into the fourth floor of the library and started literally looking up different career alternatives. So the thing is, growing up in an Indian household, your parents push you to either be a doctor or an engineer, maybe a lawyer, but that's it. There are no other options for you to choose from. So I went through all of these things in my mind, and I had to start applying for summer internships. It's springtime, and all my friends that were in the medical field were getting internships with doctors, shadowing, volunteering, research. And I'm here trying to figure out, what am I going to do? I have to take like the last 5 years of my resume from high school and into college and build it completely from scratch. So that was a really testing time for me, where am I switching too late, right? And there is no such thing. This is a 18, 19-year-old in college thinking, am I too late to pick my
Mm.
career? That's when most people are figuring out what the heck they want to do with their life. So that was definitely a very, very transformative moment for me at that time period. What was really interesting was I had a friend who said, hey, there's this role on like the board of a university group. And what we're trying to do is you're going to help determine policy for the university. It's like a tax advisory for the university. And the goal of that group was to go in and decide if we should be raising tuition for the next year. And it was like a board with a lot of power. It was all student run. And he said, you should just apply and go figure out. So it's kind of politics, kind of like
Mm.
student body government, and sort of business. And I thought, I have zero experience. I don't know what I'm going to be doing here, but let me go and try doing this. So we did a study, we ran reports, we talked to students, we figured out like a budget, we put together a proposal. So by the end of second semester, we were able to figure out how we can essentially help new students succeed without raising the cost of tuition. How do you balance that out? How do you think about need-based tuition and so forth? And that was a really random experience that basically told me that you can pick anything as long as you have the ability to solve problems and you fall in love with solving the problem. It doesn't matter what industry you're in. So I think that was probably my first foray into business in a school club. And I learned a lot through that. Again, completely tangential to what I had done before in my life, but it showed me how to start thinking. And any sort of internship project I started taking up after that, I applied the same framework. I'm going to start like I don't know anything. I'm going to learn it brick by brick. I'm happy to say I don't know something, but I will learn it fast. I will ask questions. It's okay to be dumb in the beginning, but you need to like know the inner workings of how something works. So that was like the first foray into the journey. And I think the part that got me into technology and entrepreneurship was after my first year of college, I didn't have any internships lined up. I had switched essentially careers. I had this like tax advisory thing that I did for the student body. And what me and one of my friends decided to do is, well, if no one's going to hire us, let's go and start our own thing and build something. And that's when I learned how to code. That's when I learned how to spin up a server, how to design products, learned about software. It was a really, really interesting experience, but we ended up building this events platform for campuses. We grew it to several thousand users over the summer. We recruited some of our friends as ambassadors, and it just kind of built itself up. And that's when I realized that the most fun thing is to get like a group of smart people together, and you're working every day, you're grabbing lunch, you're talking. That ends up just taking over your world. And before you know it, the summer was gone and we had so much fun. So this was a kid that knew nothing about entrepreneurship or engineering, who was in the medical field, that did a complete 180 and then started doing this. So yeah, there's always going to be doubt, but I think I was very fortunate to be surrounded by friends that motivated me, and being able to say, why not? Let's just go for this. What's the worst that can happen? Like, if I don't figure this out now, I'll still have next year. I'll figure it out as a sophomore. So that was the journey.
I think there's a lot to be said for this ability to pivot and adapt. The fact that you had sort of this lane set out for you, but very young, you were willing to like step into a different lane and then eventually like take things into your own hands. That's like a very self-driven. But yeah, I'm just quite an advocate for the left turn. I've done a few myself, quite a few left turns. They always teach you something. They always throw you into a new an unexpected world. But if you're willing to learn and acknowledge what you don't know and all that, there's no you can only benefit and grow from that. People have I think some people have a sort of perhaps a romanticized vision about university in London, and you went to Cambridge as well. How was that experience for you?
So the funny story is I was working at Microsoft. I got into Cambridge for my master's, and I had left Microsoft. I had about 1 to 2 months of free time before university started in Cambridge. I was in San Francisco. Originally, I was in Seattle, and yeah, not San Francisco. I was in Seattle. I had finished up at Microsoft, and then my friend that I knew from college, who we worked on a bunch of projects with, said, "Why don't you come over to Boston and hang out for the summer here?" He was just graduating at MIT, and we decided to just start working on a couple different projects. A nice VC gave us some free office space in Seaport, Boston, and we would go in every day like it was a job and just start working on different ideas, attending different tech events and applying to hackathons and building different products. It was at the end of the summer, we had a decision to make. He had offers at Stanford, SpaceX, a lot of great companies. And mind you, like, this person did not work out after college. I had this opportunity to go to Cambridge. We both decided to turn that down. We moved to San Francisco and started what would become Fireflies. So I didn't end up going to Cambridge. I turned it down. It was a big deal for my parents. But that was another important, spontaneous decision in my life, just like when I quit medicine.
Oh, wow. I did. Yeah. Sorry. I didn't realize that you didn't actually end up going there, but you had the offer.
Yeah. I was just a few weeks out from going.
Yeah, but that's interesting because it sounds like it drew a bit of a line in the sand for you. You had to again step into a different direction. So to explain quite simply what Fireflies is, my understanding of it is it's an AI driven translation software from meetings. So it automates all the information from meetings for people to then follow up on that information. That's a very basic understanding. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, the simplest way to understand Fireflies is it's an AI note taker for your meetings. It follows you across Zoom, Google Meet, Teams, all of the major video conferencing platforms, and it's your personal AI assistant that joins the meetings, transcribes all the conversations that we're talking about, and then it will automatically summarize the meetings, generate action items, notes, and send them over to you. You can search back through any conversation you've ever had. So AI that gives you perfect recall or memory of every person you've ever talked to on a video conferencing call. And it's able to do work for you, like fill out your CRM or write up follow-up emails for you after the meetings. So we kind of think of this as this AI assistant that is just doing work for you. It's a fly on the wall. That's why it's Fireflies that gets work done.
So it's far more than just a transcription. It's actually taking this information and making it tangible and useful because I can imagine, if you hand someone pages and pages of notes after a meeting, it'll just end up on the desk or whatever. So you're looking at how people will actually engage with that, and it will offer other things will knock on from that it could just save you endless amounts of time and streamline the whole thing.
Yeah. It's on this call right now, so it will generate notes and write things down like a human would. Shorthand notes, overviews, action items, to-dos, all of that. When we started Fireflies, we had this grand vision of AI is going to be able to take notes as good as a human. People laughed at that idea because technology wasn't very good at that time. In fact, even the transcription, many people had doubts because it was very expensive to do machine generated transcription. It wasn't very accurate back in the day, back in 2017, 2018, around that time. And we made a bet that the technology was going to get better. It was going to get cheaper. Very few investors had that conviction. Now everyone talks about AI, but back then it wasn't so obvious to be working on this stuff. Then the next barrier for us was, how do you make sense of this? I don't want a 10-page transcript of a meeting. I don't want to go back and listen to a 1-hour call. We need to make sense of this. There is so much knowledge buried inside conversations. So we need AI to be able to comb through that, extract the valuable insights and notes. Every person is taking notes. They have a pen and paper, they're taking notes, and this is such a common human behavior. So in order for Fireflies to succeed, it had to first capture everything, and then it had to generate notes where it was valuable enough for me to drop my pen and just focus on the call. So we really had the breakthrough in the last 2 years, thanks to the rise of LLMs, ChatGPT. We were able to incorporate that technology. And I can proudly say today, for me and tens of thousands of users, millions of users, that Fireflies writes better notes than if a human had to do it. And the volume of meetings Fireflies does every month is several thousand years of meetings. So if you as a human had to attend the number of meetings and take notes that Fireflies does in a single month, it would take you 2,000 years. On a single day, it would probably take you more than a century. So that was really the changing point for us, is when people started realizing, hey, this stuff is actually pretty good, and I don't have to do this anymore. No one likes taking notes. It's 2024, so let's just start using Fireflies.
The fact that it frees people up to really just engage in what's in front of them, as opposed to like trying to, be engaged, but take all this stuff at the same time, to know that weight has been taken off you, you can then absorb, it's like it doubles up in terms of the knowledge and what you can take out of that meeting. As a creative, I initially had some fears about AI, some of these fears around AI. And now I'm very much trying to find this middle ground between the left and right kind of brain, and yeah, hearing what you're saying is a perfect example of how this can really just assist and enhance retainment of knowledge and things like that. So hearing you talk about this and this is helping me as an artist come up, get over some of these fears. What do you suggest to people who have fears around AI?
This is a really important question. I believe that with AI, we need to learn to adopt it, especially in the workplace, because AI isn't going to replace us, but the person using AI will definitely have an advantage over us and can replace us. We are a 100-person organization, and we are able to do the work of a 1,000-person organization because every person in our company uses AI in some capacity, from engineering to writing code, design to answering support tickets to marketing copy. Everything, every person, including myself, we use AI to automate and streamline work. So it makes us super productive. And companies that are at our scale that don't use AI are at 1,000 to 2,000 employees. So AI has a really tangible impact, and it's an important skill set, just like how you know how to use Excel or spreadsheets and build financial models or do research and analysis. It's an important skill set that even non-technical folks are learning to use. In fact, I set up ChatGPT for my mom a few days ago, and anytime she has a question, she's just able to like go and ask it and talk to it and interact with it and like research the randomest things. And it makes her super informed and super knowledgeable. So the world has changed. It's like if you were to tell me that, hey, I don't do emails, I only write handwritten notes, and I will email them or I will mail them to you by the post office. I don't think that works anymore, right? In this digital age. So I think that it's important to embrace AI. It's also important to understand that AI is not always going to be right. And it's important to know that we need to treat AI with great care, especially when it comes to security and privacy. That's something we have to deal with day in, day out because we support businesses. But if used in the right way, it can give you an exponential leap in your career as well as in your business.
What does a day look like for you? Are you very structured with, I mean, I imagine you're extremely busy. You have a company with 100 people. How do you manage your time? Are there things that you're quite set on? Are you more spontaneous?
When we first started, it was very spontaneous. Wherever there was a problem, a support ticket that needed to be answered, meeting with an investor, looking at product engineering specs, architecture, design decisions. Every day would be a random problem that's thrown at you, and you're trying to put out fires. When you are a fast-growing startup in the early days, you can't put out all the fires, so you let some go. But I'm someone where I'm a little obsessed with perfection, and I had to give that up, and I had to realize that sometimes everything is not going to be perfect. Even when I open our software, I will see like all these little things that need to be fixed that maybe the majority of people do not need to see. So whatever that helps me help the team be productive and unblock them, that's what I used to do in the early days. Now I do have a little bit more structure in my life. I have an executive assistant. I have someone that manages my calendar, someone that manages my travel, someone that manages my interactions with investors, someone that helps me understand what's going on with customers, internal one-on-ones, all of those sort of things. So I do have a little bit more of those responsibilities, but I try to spend 50% of my time on product engineering and customers, because I think ultimately that's where I can have the biggest impact. And I'm always trying to listen and learn and see where we can improve. But yeah, every day is a challenge. I think it's also changed some of my personal relationships with friends because sometimes they can be a little bit more unstructured in their days, and I have to plan things 4 to 5 days in advance, and that's always a little bit of a struggle. So sometimes my friends aren't always the happiest when I have to pencil something in on a calendar. I have to live off the calendar. But I think that's like one of the side effects of having to do this stuff day in and day out. I work 7 days a week. So there is no such thing as a break or work-life balance, but I do it because I enjoy it,
Mm.
not just because I have to do it. And I think running the company, you are always on, you're always switched on, and you always have to know what's going on. And I was just talking to some friends this weekend. We were talking about The last time I took a proper vacation was in 2019, so 5 years ago. I've taken a day or two off here and there, but my Slack is always enabled. I will always get notifications. I will always check every couple hours. So that's kind of like how my day-to-day usually is, but I get to work on a lot of cool different problems. I'm not pigeonholed to one thing. Anything from sales to marketing to engineering to design. Both my co-founder and I have more of product and engineering backgrounds. So we are always oriented around that. And I am just as involved in engineering as he is involved in product. So we have a healthy balance there.
I think it's a very different experience when you're aligned with what you're doing. So, you're doing extraordinary hours, but when you're aligned with what you're doing, I think that can like just kind of motivate you and keep you, it's very different to if you're doing a lot of hours in something that you're just, you're not aligned with at all. That's when that can take its toll. So that's so important, the alignment.
Fast iteration makes up for mistakes. So we're all about speed and how fast and quickly can you iterate, the number of experiments that we can run and learn from. So if we can run 100 experiments and our competitor runs 50, we will accomplish more in 6 months than what they are going to do in a year. And this goes back to our earlier conversation around compounding. The more you can learn, a startup is nothing more than one big experiment. And you have to keep experimenting and doing all these little micro experiments. The other thing that I do love about being at a startup, and I tell every colleague, every person I interview this, is that you will learn more in 1 year at a startup than you would in 5 years at a big company. And you will learn more responsibility within the first 2 months than you will in the first 2 years at a big company. So the best thing about being able to work at a startup, or for those that are considering working at a startup, either founding your own or working on an early team, is things happen in a matter of minutes and hours, not in terms of months. So I know so many people at big tech companies where they get all excited, they're ready to join, and they want to do something, but because of the bureaucracy, what could be done in 2 weeks ends up taking 2 quarters, so 6 months, 7 months, and then you naturally get demotivated and you slow down to the pace of that particular organization. Whereas at Fireflies, we ask everyone to challenge the thing that, why is this going to take 2 months? Why can't we do this today, in the next 2 weeks? And that creates that immediacy. I think one of my weaknesses is I'm pretty impatient. And so I don't like waiting in lines when I'm at the amusement park. So I'm like, I want like that instantly, I want to do something. So if I need to send out an email or if I need to respond to someone, I don't like the idea of, oh, it's late, I need to sleep, let me deal with it tomorrow. I don't want new stuff on my plate or pending stuff on my plate when I wake up. I want to just have it done before I go to sleep. So that sort of impatience, it can be a little annoying, but it's also helpful because I want to get it done before the end of the day. So even to this day, every single day before I sleep, my inbox, which is usually thousands of emails, gets to zero by the end of the day. And I get about maybe 500, 600 Slack messages a day. I'm in more than like 20, 30 channels. Everything is read before I go to bed. So it's a little bit of a obsessive compulsive habit, I would say. Yeah.
It's almost like being an athlete in a way, staying on top of all that, keeping that backlog, especially in this day and age where there's so much information coming in. But I'm also a perfectionist. I find it, I'm getting better at like, the 80% and accepting I think it's the wabi-sabi that the Japanese call it, the embracing the imperfections of things. And I too want to speed things up. And Germany is the land of the queue. There's just people love a queue here. Like they're very happy to stand in it. So I hear you on that front. It's a tradition on the show to have guests offer some kind of daily practice to listeners. Is there something that you have tried or has had a big impact on you, or even something that just springs from our conversation that listeners could try?
One thing that I used to do by myself every morning is aggregate all of the things that are happening in my industry. And I would just spend an hour getting up to speed on that, usually early in the morning or after I've like checked my most immediate work messages. I do have a person on the team, my EA, that I have her do one specific task every morning, which is be able to go through all of the newsletters, articles, journals, magazines that I read, take all that stuff, run it through like ChatGPT, summarize it, and basically give me the TLDR concise like overview of what's going on in the industry. So that is a habit that I've developed over time. It's funny because as a kid, I hated reading and I would rarely read fiction, let alone nonfiction. But now it's like become a habit for me to just be able to like digest and learn what's going on in the industry. And learning that stuff has also helped me take examples and apply it to my own business. So I love learning through examples of what other companies have done. Another habit that I have is in the afternoons, when I do have free time, I like to get my steps in, or before I go to the gym, or when I'm at the gym, I like to have a podcast on a particular topic that I'm thinking about. Let's say it's in marketing and we want to figure out how to do a certain type of marketing initiative. I will go listen to 5, 6 expert podcasts on that stuff. And it's like getting it's the equivalent of me going and talking to 5 to 10 people to learn about a subject. So there is so much online, and I think it can be overwhelming. But if you can develop a system where you allocate maybe just 15, 20 minutes a day to learning about what's happening in your industry, what's happening with your competitors, maybe what's happening across areas that you're curious about, you will learn a lot. And the 15, 20 minutes will compound over the next, 1 to 2 years, and you'll be a much smarter person than before.
That's crucial because you're staying ahead of the game. It'll be easy for you to just be caught up in the day to day of stuff. But the fact that you're taking this moment to stay up to speed with what's going on is vital, because I imagine so many CEOs or people would just be caught in the running day to day stuff. But you're actually ensuring that you're staying on top because things are changing so rapidly, I imagine. So yeah, that's a really, really awesome practice. And then the doubling up, the exercise and the knowledge coming in. I try and do that in car time because I get frustrated driving. I just get, if I'm stuck in traffic. But if I'm listening to something exactly as you've said, I'm like, well, this time is actually valuable. So it stops me. I don't even get angry in traffic jams because I'm just taking knowledge in. So I'm like, well, if I'm just getting that knowledge in, it's a good use of time. Is there a piece of music or a film that's had a profound impact on you, or even a book that came to you at the right time?
So I started reading a lot more recently. And one book that I read in college that I don't know how real the psychological effect is, but it was on this concept of the law of attraction and how when you visualize something, you start thinking about it and then you manifest it. So it was a very wishy-washy idea at that time. But I do think that every time I'm able to like think about something and then figure out a plan to get there. So just like a wish without a plan, like a goal without a plan is just a wish. So I try to like kind of think through that. That sort of framework has had a very positive effect on life for me in terms of personal stuff as well as in terms of just building the business. So me and my co-founder have like this ritual or habit that we do where we practice this. Every Thanksgiving, we like to look back at what we're thankful for in terms of our business, our team, the company, and it's right about the end of the year, right? It's November time, and so Thanksgiving is this American holiday where we're eating a lot and we're just like chilling. But one of the things we also do is like we look at what we're thankful for and what we want to achieve next year. When we come back next year and we do this, where would we like to be? And sometimes you don't achieve everything you set out to do, but that having that sort of outlook, that vision exercise, I think it really comes from this concept of the law of attraction. There's a book called The Secret, which I had read. Again, it may work, it may not work. The theories might be fluffy, but I think this idea of visualizing, manifesting, and when you think about something enough, you naturally will attract those sort of things into your life. I do believe that because you start to take action when you start thinking about it. When it sits in your mind and it saturates, you naturally will start putting the pieces in place to take action. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. That's a good balance between the sort of almost, like you say, fluffy side of it, but then making that very like tangible and practical. Um, yeah, there's a lot to be said for that. Just to bring it home. So what I'm finding interesting from what I know about Fireflies, on at first it could be seen as something primarily for businesses, but actually this could be useful for anybody who's just trying to like this call, for instance, for me to use it now and get like some takeaways from this would be very useful. So it's flexible, right, in terms of who can benefit from this.
We primarily focused on businesses and teams and sales meetings, recruiting meetings, internal meetings, but we have a lot of podcasters that use Fireflies because they can go in and then automatically create little sound bites or clips from it. They can export the transcript and publish it to their website for SEO. We have students that use Fireflies, though that's not one of our target markets. Like many of the major universities across the globe, people have used Fireflies during the pandemic for all those remote meetings or remote lectures. We are HIPAA compliant, so now we're getting into the healthcare space. So we see doctors using Fireflies in telemedicine situations. So every human needs to have conversations. Conversations is where work happens. Conversations is also where the most important decisions are made. And I think that if we can just help people a little bit remember those valuable conversations, we've done our job.
Cool. Are you looking at German at all? Using German
We
in
have launched support for the German language. In
Okay.
fact, we launched for 60 new languages, I believe around 60. Spanish, French, German, Japanese. So those are definitely some of the more popular ones. Portuguese, and Fireflies has gone global since then.
I imagine the software would be real, or the platform will be really tested if it listened to me try and speak German, because I've got this Australian accent or grammatical German. I would be the prime case of like somebody. It'd be interesting to see the power of it there.
English is definitely our most accurate, and it's on par with human transcription, 95% plus for good audio quality. The other languages, I know with time we'll get there for sure too. Yeah.
Cool. Where can people find it, and where can people find you?
Fireflies.ai, the website. There's a free version of the product. You can sign up, get started, start using it on your upcoming meetings. And I'm on LinkedIn, Krish Ramineni, and I'm also on other social channels. My handle is Krish Ramineni, so Instagram, LinkedIn, Twitter. Yeah.
Cool. Is there anything we haven't covered? Perhaps somebody who's wanting to take a first step into creating a business, just to finish.
I think the most important thing is taking the first step. So a lot of times ideas die at that ideas phase because we fail to take that initial action. The initial action is where most of the friction is. So it's very, very important that you just learn to take that first step and bet on that potential and let the outcomes take care of themselves. But if you can just get that idea down on paper, maybe first step is going and doing market research or incorporating the business. That helps. Like, you build momentum by doing the little things. That's probably the best advice I could give from my experience so far.
Yeah, for sure. Small but very big, that first step. So yeah, well, I really appreciate your time. There's been a lot of insights there in a relatively short amount of time. So thank you so much.
No, I appreciate it. This was awesome, and yeah, it got me supercharged for sure, Daniel.
There you go, guys. Honest ratings for the show on Apple are appreciated. If you have a guest suggestion, please feel free to reach out on my website at danielthomas.co. I'm also on social media at Mr. Dan Thomas. Catch you on the next episode.